In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can make a quick, inexpensive birthday cake for only $20 by taking a Walmart cake and jazzing it up into something special that celebrates the people you love. So let's get into it. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I took this cake from Walmart and turned it into this cake. For this $20 project, I picked up powdered sugar, chocolate chips, strawberries, a block of cream cheese, a pint of heavy whipping cream, and then this chocolate cake which I got for $10 at Walmart. First thing I did was take the cake out of the container and put it on the cake stand. When I did this, I saw that it was a little crooked, and as I was working with it, I tried to use things to make it look uneven, but obviously I wasn't going to re-level it. Once it was centered, I tried to start smoothing out the frosting. As I was doing that, I realized it was too hard. I could leave it to sit out at room temperature, but I ended up just popping it into the microwave for about 30 seconds, checking it every 10 seconds. And when I could feel it softening, it then worked so much better to take the frosting off. I simply smoothed out the ridges, scraped off any of the excess frosting, and tried to smooth it out as best I could. I really wanted those ridges on the sides and on the top to go away, especially on the sides. I wanted ganache dripping down the sides, and I didn't want the ridges to cause a funny pattern in it. So I kept working until it was all smooth. I was still having a little bit of a hard time in places. It was still kind of hard. It really wasn't smoothing out. So I ended up grabbing a glass of hot water and dipping my knife into that glass, and that seemed to work a lot better. I was just trying to get everything smoothed out, kind of stripping it down before I started building it back up. And I did leave the crumbs at the bottom. Depending on what cake you buy, you'll kind of play it by ear. But I think the first step in any of these projects where you're just redecorating a cake that's already decorated is just getting it smoothed down so you can put your own touch on it and you're ready to go for that. It was all smooth now, so I put it into the fridge to kind of set up again so I was ready to decorate. I moved on to making my ganache and took a cup of heavy whipping cream and heated it in the microwave for 1.5 minutes. You can now see after I've heated it, it's kind of bubbly. You don't want it to boil, just to be warm. I then added a cup of bittersweet Ghirardelli chips. You could use any chocolate here, whether chopped or chips. You can see I made a complete disaster, but I got it done. You want to push any chocolate under the surface of the cream and let it set for 1 minute before stirring it up. You want to make sure you leave it set for that minute so that it has time to melt the chocolate, and then you should stir it until it becomes smooth. If you still see lumps, pop it in the microwave on 15-second intervals, stirring after every interval until it is completely smooth. From here, the ganache needs to cool before it goes on the cake. If it went on the cake, it would melt it. And I did use this ganache strip to cover up some of the imperfections, and I think it does a really good job of making it look special and covering up those imperfections. To help it cool off a little faster, I poured it into my piping bag just so it'd be a little more spread out. Be careful that it's not too hot or it'll melt the plastic piping bag. You can put it in the fridge, but if you do, you have to be careful of not letting it harden in the tip. I then went on and sliced some strawberries. I knew in order to make this Walmart cake taste fresher, make it pop, I was going to incorporate fresh fruits, and I think that strawberries and chocolate are a really great pairing. So I sliced up about a half a package of strawberries for the cake. It was then time for the ganache strip. I sliced a corner off of that ganache and I started dripping it down the sides. And honestly, this just takes practice. I wasn't that happy with some of my drips either, and I think that's okay. It's part of making a cake at home. Not everything is perfection, and so it's all part of the process. And it really shows the person that you make it for that it's special, that it's made by you, and that it's handmade. I then squirted ganache all over the top of the cake to finish it off. It looks a little crazy right now, but then I took my knife out and I started smoothing it and just smooth it all along. We are going to put stuff all over the top, so this is a very forgiving cake. You won't be able to see a lot of the imperfections, and it's supposed to be kind of a loose, imperfect cake. So I smoothed it all out until it looked good. And just make sure to get the edges, they're easy to miss. And again, for the most part, it will be covered up with toppings. I then set that in the fridge and moved on to my whipped cream frosting. I popped in cream cheese and powdered sugar and about 1/4 cup of the ganache that I made earlier. I used my paddle attachment and I beat that until it was nice and smooth. I would stop the mixer once in a while, scrape it down. Cream cheese and stuff like that, ganache, it kind of tends to stick and clump at the bottom, so you kind of have to keep working. You can see now it is smooth. And the next part is to add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, so we're adding the other half of that pint of heavy whipping cream that I bought. And then we'll continue to use the paddle attachment to beat that until it is combined. Now when it is completely combined, in order to get a really nice whip texture, I'm going to take my paddle attachment off and I'm actually going to switch it out for my whisk attachment. This really gets it to fluff up nicely. The paddle attachment's more for combining, and the whisk attachment does a better job at whisking and making it fluffy. If you have a handheld mixer, obviously you'll just keep mixing it all throughout this until it becomes nice and beautiful and fluffy. Now, to know that it is at the right stage, you do not want to overmix, but obviously in order to get it to pipe nicely, it needs to be the right consistency. I always tell by tipping my bowl, if the edges do not drift away from the side, then I know it is the right thickness and I need to stop before it gets over thick and turns into butter. I then take a piping bag and I cut off the tip so that I can fit a piping tip through it. I use the 1M tip. This is like the most common tip. They sell it everywhere, Walmart, Hobby Lobby, you name it, they probably sell it. I slide it to the bottom and then I start filling that bag up with that chocolate whipped cream we made. You'll notice that we're reusing a lot of the same ingredients, and that's what I love about this, there's no waste and there's not buying a lot of different ingredients. Now I'm going to finish the cake. I start by piling the sliced strawberries on the middle of the cake. Again, I'm kind of just getting a rough base. At the end of this process, I'll go back through and maybe get the middle of the cake to look good. I want a little height there, and so you can see I'm working with the strawberries to get it built up in the center. You want to think what side is going to be the front and then kind of build it up so that you can use that side, and you might want to look around and see which ganache strips are the best. What would I like to use for the front? And so I just started placing the strawberries. There's no right or wrong answer here. You're just kind of doing it until you get something you like. And I did try to kind of point the points of the strawberries up in the middle of the cake, like you can see there, to kind of build some height and make it look a little more dramatic. I then picked up my whipped cream in my piping bag, piped swirls of whipped cream all the way around the cake, just starting and putting pressure on the bag and squeezing and working in a circular motion and then releasing pressure and moving away. I worked all the way around the cake and it was pretty straightforward. I would recommend putting the strawberries on first like I did here. I think if you put them on after the whipped cream, you would mess the whipped cream up. So I just kept working until I made it all the way around. You'll notice on this last one, our second to last one, it was kind of low, so I ended up going back and building it up a little bit. This cake is not perfect, and that's part of its charm for me. So the next thing to finish the cake was to take the ganache in a small piping bag and snip off a tip. You wanted to make it small. I actually made mine too small here, but remember, you can always make it bigger. You can't make it smaller. You don't want big old globs of ganache, so keep it pretty thin. And I just drizzled it back and forth. This is sped up, but it did go pretty quickly. And then I drizzled it over the strawberries and I was done. I think this is an awesome cake. Comes together really quickly. It has a nice fresh taste with the whipped cream, the strawberries, and then obviously who doesn't like chocolate, and there was absolutely no baking involved. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you think there's someone else that might want to use this, share it with them. And if you want to see more videos like this talking about using food to encourage people, celebrating the people that you love, hit subscribe, and I'll see you all next Thursday. Bye.